Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. If you can hear my voice, will you just give me a thumbs up or tell me in the chat box? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. You may notice the background looks a little different today. If I make sudden movements, you might see my hotel room. So how many of you are familiar with the tool StrengthsFinder? Anybody here familiar with that tool? It's an awesome tool. And it's a tool that helps you know what you're good at. So I'm a huge fan of the tool StrengthsFinder because I think a lot of times we don't see what we're good at, and that can affect our confidence, right? So I am at the Gallup StrengthsFinder conference today, and I hopped up into my hotel room to run this conference today, or this session today. So hopefully you can hear me well. One thing I will say is if we have an internet issue, just stay put and I will switch. I've been testing the internet. It seems totally fine, but I always get a little nervous when I'm traveling. So if something happens, just come right back and we'll continue. All right, well, I would love to hear something good. If you could tell me in the chat box, and who here has a win? I want to hear one person unmute. Everybody else can use the chat box, but we haven't seen each other for about 2 weeks, and I would just love to hear a win that's going on in your world, and then we'll jump into today's topic. So who has a win to share, either business or personal? And you won't awkward silence me into talking.
Hey, so Anna, I'll tell you. So we had a really great.
Perfect.
We had one of our agents that had their highest transaction was, I think, maybe like $830,000, and she just got a 2.6. So it was really awesome. She got it done, and it was it was really exciting.
That's amazing. So 2.6 million. That's a great transaction.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So that's a great commission. I don't know about you all, but I love calculating commission. I think that's probably true for all of us. So that's awesome. Thanks for the win. Alyssa just got back from Universal with her family. That sounds fun. That sounds better. I love the conference I'm at, but it's in Omaha, Nebraska. Are any of you from Nebraska? If you are, I need tips on how you survive the heat. Okay. It's really hot here. But that's awesome. I'm glad you had fun in Universal. Well, let's go ahead and jump in today. If you're able to turn your cameras on, I would love to be able to see your faces. It's so much more energizing, and it does help others in the group to see you. It just makes the class more fun. So today we're going to be talking about appointment setting. How many of you have implemented, and you can give me a reaction here. So if you remember, there's a reactions bottom at the end, and you could do a little heart, something like what I just did. How many of you have used the language from the last call and seen some sort of success? So I see a couple hands raised. That's amazing. I did get an email from someone who, I don't know that they're here today, but they said since the last class, they've taken 3 listings and they had none before. So that is a testament to the fact that the content works. So just a quick reminder is when you're setting up the appointment, you'll say things like, see if you can do this from memory as I rattle it off. When we meet, we're going to do 3 things. Number 1, go back over motivation and price. Number 2, interview each other, make sure we're a good fit. And then number 3, assuming everything looks good, we will sign paperwork to activate the next step. Any questions? Can you do that from memory? Can you? I hope so, because I'm telling you that is a money-making 3-step process right there. So let the person who took 3 listings, who previously had 0 listings and was struggling to find business, let that be a testament to you that this material does work. So make sure you're implementing it. So last class, we talked a good bit about how to set appointments that actually show up. Today, we're going to talk more about what do you do after the appointment is set and what are some of the systems of appointment setting. So today isn't so much about language, it's significantly more about systems. So I'm excited to jump into that with you today. So get your notes and we're going to jump right in. And then of course, at the end, we'll have time for questions. Okay, so appointment setting. Today's objectives, I just told you, but other than verbiage, how to achieve high show ratios. So again, making sure the appointment actually shows up. And then we're going to spend a good bit of time talking about how to track appointments. How many of you are an inside sales agent or you're on a team where you set appointments for someone that is not you? Who here is in that scenario? And actually tell me the chat box, because when I'm sharing screen, I only see about 6 people out of the 30 some that are here. So let me know in the chat box if you set appointments for someone other than yourself. The tracker will help you even if you set just for yourself. So the tracker will still apply to you. Those of you that set for other people, I have a feeling especially you are going to love the tracker. We hear a lot of people say things like, I set an appointment and then I have no idea what happens to it. And this tracker today is going to solve that problem. Those of you that set appointments for yourself, the appointment tracker is going to help you have a hot list. And what I mean by that is people, do you remember way back, we talked about the football analogy and we said your goal is to gain yardage every single call. We also compared it to history timeline. And we said, like, here's new lead. Can you see me with my blurred background? Here's new lead all the way through to signed agreement. Well, if you think about it, people that set an appointment with you but did not show up, they were really close to the end zone, right? So it actually is a hot list for setting appointments. If you need an appointment, you can go to your appointment tracker. So I'm really excited to show that to you today, and we'll definitely get into that before we run out of time. All right, so let's go ahead and talk through some of the essentials with appointment setting. So a lot of times people will say, I'm having trouble with setting appointments. Can you help me? And the thing is, it's not just the actual verbiage of setting the appointment. And don't worry, I will put the slide back up for those of you frantically taking notes, but I really just want to be eye to eye with you here for a minute. What we have to understand is setting appointments is not just about the verbiage of actually setting the appointment, right? If I talk to someone for 5 minutes, very brief, very brief, never talked to them before, 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, great, let's set a time. And I go through the 3 steps. I go through picking a time, putting them on hold, checking the calendar. The bottom line is, if they are not invested and I have not qualified them, they are a high risk no-show. They very likely will not show up, okay? So it's not just the verbiage of setting the appointment itself. It's not just the verbiage of how to pick a time to give value in showing up. A lot of it is doing pre-qualification. So I have coached people before who they are nailing and just perfectly crushing. When we meet, we're going to do 3 things. Let me put you on hold and check the calendar. But we find out that actually is not the issue for why people aren't showing up. It's that they're basically saying you have a heartbeat and you want to move, let's set a time. And they're not actually taking the time to do that 7 to 10 minute pre-qualification. I'm not going to teach pre-qualification today just because we've actually done that twice, session 1, and then I believe session 7. We did all about pre-qualification. So you can go back and watch those, and it's the sheets that I gave you in session 1. But just know, if you are not pre-qualifying people, that is a mouthful. Try saying that. Quality pre-qualifying people, you're going to have a much higher chance that they just will not show up. Let me do discussion real quick because we are a smaller group today. I think a lot of people are watching the recordings. Why do you think not pre-qualifying them impacts their showing up? And there's multiple reasons, so don't be shy. I'd love to hear from you.
I think because if they're not ready, they're not going to give you time to drive and meet with you if they don't feel that they know you. So familiarity is important. If they just out off the street and you don't spend time to qualify it, why they're supposed to give you time?
Yeah. And so some people won't set with you if you don't pre-qualify. But even people who do set with you, why would they not show up if you skip pre-qualify? Because both scenarios are totally true. Thank you for that, Elena. Am I saying your name right, Elena? Okay, perfect. Yeah, Arlissa in the chat box said they're not vested in the process yet. Yep. I believe we've talked about this, but it was so brief you may have missed it. It was just a side comment in a previous webinar. But we were talking about personality profiles. And the most common personality in the US is the person who does not want to rock the boat. They're very people-oriented and they don't want to rock the boat. Now, I found that hard to believe because I work in real estate and I hang out with all of you guys, and you guys are the boat shakers, right? So my world, I feel like I hang out with a lot of people who are the bold risk takers, and I love it. That's why I love teaching real estate agents specifically. And if I can just have a hallmark moment with all of you, this content, can we just agree you could teach it in any industry, right? Like, it's sales. But I have ventured in that, and I always come back to real estate agents because I just love the personality of real estate agents, because you are bold, you are the risk takers, you are the people who bet on yourselves. And I think that's really exciting. So the point I'm making is most people are not wired like those of us in this call right now. Most people are, I might not want to go in this appointment, but I'm just going to say yes because I feel bad, but I'm not going to show up. So if the point I'm making here, when you take the time to slow down and do quality pre-qualification, essentially what you have done is asked them to sacrifice 10 or so minutes of their time building that relationship with you. And that likely is going to mean that they are more vested in the relationship. Does that make sense to everyone? Versus they could have hung up with you or, oh, I have to go. The other thing is it's going to help you prepare. So think of pre-qualification as if you are a dispatcher and you want to send, I think I gave this analogy before, but my dad's a police officer. He's retired now, but he was a police officer. And one time I was in a ride along with him. Very bad idea. Don't do that with a close family member because it's a little scary. But we got sent to a domestic violence situation. And it was scary because I was watching my dad approach the door knowing there's danger on the other side. What helped was the dispatcher pre-qualified, so to speak. They, the whole time we were driving there, was feeding information. Here's the scenario, here's all the people involved. Here's whether or not there's a weapon involved. They basically just filled us in on everything going on. Truthfully, that made me feel a whole lot better because by the time my dad got to the door, he had a good idea of what was going on, which meant he could have a good result, right? And thankfully he did. Things were fine. They ended well in that situation. But think of yourself like a dispatcher, and the more information you can have going into this scenario, the better chance you have for a good result. So that's what I want you to think about with pre-qualification. Anybody else have something you want to say about pre-qualification, about the value of it, why it matters? Because this is such an important topic. Anybody else?
I do too. I think really, a great pre-qualification is the first chance that we get to really show our value in helping them walk through what the process is going to look like. We're gonna unpack what this process is going to look like, and that it's not as scary as a lot of people think, and that what they may find out is they're a lot closer than they really think they really are. And you get to be the one that unpacks all that stuff so they really can get connected to you. And that's when we see the best return or conversion on appointment set.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that.
And I think the pre-qualification actually give you information what you need to bring.
Yes.
Because they might don't want to hear. Sometimes we just talk, and then maybe this is not what they're actually looking. And many times I see even like I teach Ignite sometimes, and even seasonal agent, they just afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
And then they're so disappointed. Yeah. But if they would ask this question ahead of the time, they might save the disappointment and the time, actually, preparation.
Yes, totally agree with both of you. Thank you guys for sharing. And I will say, I'm thankful my realtor pre-qualified me. It was very informal. We were in the church hallway. I didn't know he was pre-qualifying me. But he knew I wanted to buy a house, and he was like, so, what's your timeline? And I told him, and he's like, what makes you want to wait? And I said, because I don't make a lot of money. And my understanding is I need 20% down to buy a house. And in my head, like, this is going to take me forever to get 20% down because I don't make a lot of money. I don't have a lot of extra. And he quickly informed me that there are other kind of loans for first-time homebuyers. To us, that probably seems obvious, but can this just be a reminder to you that people not in real estate, especially those first-time homebuyers, they don't know what they don't know. And I just had always heard 20% down. And I thought I will be 1,000,000 years old before I ever buy a house. I am very thankful that he took time to say, what is your timeline? How are you paying for a house? And why do you feel you need to wait that long? I went from thinking this would be years and years and years away to buying a house within the next I think it was about 3 months from the time we had that conversation to the house that I bought. I am so thankful he took the time to pre-qualify me. So just remember, if you're ever tempted to skip pre-qualification or think I'll get it later, think of it like you were doing a disservice to the person you're talking to. They may have a misconception that they don't know, and you can uncover that through pre-qualification. Yeah. The last thing I'll say about pre-qualification is it is the time investment. So the way I look at it is if, say, I'm talking to Bill, if Bill is kind of brushing me off on the phone, that's a sign he's probably also going to brush off the appointment, right? So by holding the line that we got to get pre-qualification before we meet, well, you wouldn't say that to the client, but you could say, I have a list of questions I want to ask you so I can prepare for our appointment and save us time in the appointment. It'll take maybe 10 minutes. And if they push back on that, that could be a sign that they also would not show up. So make sure you're pre-qualifying. The one exception, of course, would be you hear children screaming in the background, or they say, hey, I really want to talk to you, but I'm about to walk into a meeting. Then follow up and get the pre-qual. You can set a time to call back, but don't meet with them without getting it done. Okay. Really passionate about that. Really, really passionate about that. I keep saying one last thing, but I keep thinking of things. If someone pushes back, like, I don't really have time for this right now. One, that might be legit. They really might be in a situation you can't see what's going on in their world. But what I like to do is tell people by taking 10 minutes now, it will probably save us about 30 to 40 minutes in the actual meeting, because this information is what's going to help us prepare for the meeting. So I will know exactly what to cover. I won't overshare with you because we're taking the 10 minutes. And usually people that feel like they're in a rush, that really helps them take 10 minutes and talk to you. Okay, point number 2, let's move on. Make sure that appointment happens within 48 hours. I put 24 to 48. You could put 0 to 48. If they can meet with you today in the next hour, do it, right? The longer it goes, though, the less likely they'll show up. So who remembers the statistic? If they set more than 48 hours out, how much less likely are they to show up? Who remembers?
Was it 80% less?
Yeah, close. So anybody else want to take a guess?
Well, I'm learning I'm not good at memorizing statistics.
Well, hey, that's why you take notes. You don't have to memorize this.
Now I just need to know where I took that note. So, okay.
That's funny. You only remember 8% of what you hear. So make sure you're taking notes. So you were almost there. So it's 80% will show up when you pre-qualify and you follow all the steps given in this class. It drops to 20% if they are more than 48 hours away. So that is a 60% decrease. That is significant. That is a very significant decrease. And so we've actually tracked this, and I have followed teams and monitored this. And we were looking at, are you doing something super different for these people that aren't showing up? And what we found was that people setting the appointments really sounded pretty much the same. If you stood behind them for a day, when they set appointments, they're doing it the same every time. It's a different name, it's a different scenario, but they sound the same. When we meet, we'll do 3 things. Let me put you on hold, check the calendar. The thing that made the difference overwhelmingly, the majority of the time, was the ones that didn't show were more than 48 hours out, and everything else was the same. So some of you on this call, that might be your takeaway from today. You might have perfect verbiage. You might be, very much connecting with these clients. You're following the language, you're following the processes, and you are like, I do not understand why my appointments are not showing up. Well, just check. If you're doing it more than 2 days out, I guarantee you that right there is part of the issue. So just get them within 2 days. Let's go back to last session real quick. That is why we do not recommend that you say, hey, when is a good time for us to meet? How much do you hear people doing that in your office? You don't have to call anyone out, but how many of us hear people saying things like that? I've done it. I've been that person. Hey, when is a good time for you? And they say a week from now, and now we're really in trouble, right? So that is why we say that verbiage. And that's why I said, don't change the verbiage. Don't be rogue on this. It's, let me put you on hold and check the calendar. Okay, I have this time or this time, and make sure it's within 48 hours. Okay. So that is the way to do it. Okay, so in your notes, just make sure you put down it's a 60% difference if it's more than 48 hours. Okay, the next thing, the communication between the appointment set to appointment seen. Some of you call that set to held, but the idea is I set the appointment and we haven't met yet. What happens between that and actually meeting? So I'll give you there's so many different ways you could do this. Let me give you a couple guidelines and what I used to do, and you could modify this or do it, however you want for your team. What I used to do is, let's say I set an appointment with Jay. I would say, hey, Jay, after we hang up, you're probably going to have questions pop in your head. That's normal. So don't freak out. And what I'll do is I'm going to call you before the appointment to remind you, not confirm. Okay. Because that sounds like they can cancel. If it's not confirmed yet, it's not real. So no, we've already set this appointment, right? So Jay, I will call you to remind you of the appointment. And when I call you, you can tell me any other questions you thought of after we hang up. And that was kind of like the basic thing for every appointment set, whether that appointment was in 1 hour or 2 days from now. Everybody got the sentences, hey, after we hang up, you may think of more questions, and I will call to remind you of the appointment beforehand and just let me know what you thought of. And that's normal. Everybody has questions after we hang up. Totally normal. And what I'm also doing is I'm letting him know if that happens, don't freak out. I don't know about you guys, but I had like an alter personality when I was buying my house. It was like, where did this person come from? But it was from the stress of moving. How many of you have experienced that? You're in a high stress situation and you find yourself just kind of not yourself. So by letting him know that that could happen and it's normal to have questions after we hang up, that actually will help them show up because they know that they're normal. Now it's beyond that. It's up to you what else you do. So what we used to do, and just put all this in your notes if you would like in the margin. The other thing we would do is we would send them an email about our team. And we had a little video about how to price houses if they were a seller, not if they were a buyer. And we would just say, hey, check out the email before you come in, just so you know a little bit about our team before you come in. Whether they watched the video or read the email or not wasn't necessarily super important. It was just another reason to contact them and stay in touch. What I would say, if that appointment, for whatever reason, did have to get set more than 48 hours away, contact them every 48 hours. So that could happen. For example, if you were setting an appointment with me, I've been in Omaha, Nebraska since Saturday. I would have been a more than 48-hour away appointment, not because I'm not interested, because I'm out of town. So your strategy for me would have been every 2 days, maybe either text me, email me, something so that I'm not falling out of touch with you. My favorite thing to do for that is to send an email. And then the next day, send a text. Hey, did you get my email? Just as an excuse to reach out to them. Okay. The last thing I'll say on this point is I did find, and this is important. This is really important. I did find that for sale by owners and expireds, I needed to do a teeny bit extra because I'm so unknown to them. So like if I set an appointment with Tyra, she maybe was on our website. We had a great conversation. She's not already a little ticked at realtors. Most likely she was a web lead. She's probably fine. But let's say I call Jesse and he's real mad at realtors. He just expired off the market. He's feeling super downtrodden. Like, I don't even know if this house can sell. Sure, I'll meet with you. I don't know if I'll buy, or sell, but I'll meet with you. Okay. Well, I'm going to need to do a little extra for him. And that's just what I learned. My expireds and FSBOs showed up 50% of the time. And what we did to get it up to that 80 was if they were close enough to the office, we would drop off a packet of information about the team. And we would tell them, we're going to drop something off. You don't need to be home. We'll just leave it by your door. And that extra step did help them show. If they lived too far away to drop something off time-wise, I would just make sure that I emailed them more than what I emailed everybody else. Just a little something, maybe a client testimonial video or something like that. So I just found that those expireds and FSBOs needed a little extra love to actually show up in my own experience. Okay, if you have something else that you like to do, put it into the chat box. And just for time, and then at the end, if we have time, we can talk about other things that people do. But let us know, what do you do when you set an appointment and the appointment has not happened yet? What do you do between, if it's different than what I just shared? And again, put that into the chat box. Janet is asking a great question. This opens up all another conversation. But no, we did not meet people at their house. And let that encourage you. I don't usually mention that on these webinars. We made listing and buyer appointments at our office, which meant some people were driving 30 minutes to meet with us because I'm in a more, it's not a huge city that I live in. And let that encourage you that even with having people come to our office, we did not go to their house. We still had an 80% show ratio, between 70 and 80, which is right, that sweet spot. And we had 90 to 95% people hire us. And that's with making them come to us. Okay. I'm not saying that you need to do that, but that was our standard. And I will tell you why. People are emotional when they're in their own house, right? And so especially the listings, if we can get them into our office, they're a lot less emotional. Now, I still want to know their motivation and stuff, but what I mean is, I remember one time I did go to a lady's house to just preview it, and she was crying, telling me how many years they've had Christmas in this house and all this stuff. For the actual listing appointment, she was fine. She was not emotional because she wasn't looking at, that's where my kids have baked cookies for the last 20 plus years. So that was our philosophy behind having people come to the office versus us going to them. But again, that does not mean that that's what you need to do. But since you brought it up, I thought I would mention it. Okay, Dan is asking, what did we put into the package? It was honestly the same thing we would email, but we would print it and put it in a nice packet. And so don't, we didn't overcomplicate it, but it just had things like how many homes have we sold, a little bit about the team. This will tell you how long ago it was, but we had a DVD about how to price your homes, and we would say, hey, just watch this before you come in, bring it back, which again, hopefully helps them want to show up. And it really wasn't a lot. It wasn't anything super fancy, but it was more that we wanted them to see we came to your house and dropped something off for you. And we wanted it to look professional. The content wasn't necessarily the most important thing. Does that make sense to everyone? How many of you get handwritten cards? This will reveal personalities. How many of you get handwritten cards and you don't read what the card said that was like pre-printed, like the Hallmark thing, but you read what they handwrote? Yeah, a lot. Okay, most of you just raise your hand. But they picked that card for a reason, right? Like they probably took a minute, stood there and picked out the card and figured out what the little writing should say. And they're like, okay, this card. And then we don't even really read it. We read their handwritten stuff. So the point I'm making is, isn't it still nice to get that handwritten card, even though you didn't read the whole thing? It's the idea that I got something that wasn't a bill and someone took the time to do it. So that's the idea here. So what I don't want you to do is go spend an enormous amount of time perfecting some sort of packet that's going to take away from your lead gen. But just something like a personal touch. It could even be a handwritten card. It could simply be, we are really excited to meet with you tomorrow. And that's it. That alone could be enough to increase that. Does that help everyone? So don't get perfectionistic about it. But that is the gist of it. Okay. All right, let's get back to appointment setting essentials. Great questions, great conversation. Okay, the next thing that will help them show up is to remind them of their motivation before you hang up. So this would be, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to them about, yeah, I can't wait to meet with you, I'm excited. And then I'll say, hey, just remember, yes, we're going to talk about marketing. Yes, you're going to meet the listing agent, all that stuff. And the main reason we are meeting is to help you downsize so you can move to the beach and spend time with your grandkids. So don't get lost in all the technicalities. We do have to talk about that stuff because it's the process of real estate. And what we are really meeting for is to help you achieve X, whatever that is, okay? Imagine if you had a personal trainer who every morning when you went to the gym, he said, hey, just remember, we are here to help you fit into that dress or to be able to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, or we are here to help you be able to rehab your knee. Here's what we're going to do today, but just remember, we're here for your goal. Wouldn't that be super amazing and very energizing? So that's what we're going to do for our clients. And then for those of you that do set appointments for other people, Again, I just want to remind you of that nurse doctor analogy, or the waiter chef some people like. And that's where you can say something like, hey, Elena, we're going to have you meet with, Dan. He is like the doctor. So think of him as the real estate doctor. So Elena, Dan is really going to be the one that ultimately helps you. He'll be the one that's your agent. Think of me kind of like the nurse. So I was just gathering all your info, or I need to gather all your info, and then I will hand that to Dan so he can really take great care of you. So I'm kind of just gathering your vital signs right now. That is what most people use. And I get a lot of feedback that that works really well. So you would usually use that on the front end of pre-qualification. Before I jump into all the questions, you can say, hey, I'm about to ask you a bunch of questions. Think of me like a nurse. I'm just gathering your vital signs, and then I will pair you with the right person. I did have a student once say that they used the waiter chef analogy. And they said it worked pretty good. So you could do that too. And they said, think of me like I'm the waiter. I'm gathering what it is you want, but the chef is the one that will actually take care of you. And I thought that was a decent analogy as well. Okay, so let's talk about appointment tracking and why are we doing it? And then I will show you the tracker. Number one, make sure you get paid. Who here wants to get paid? So true story. I remember this, and Michael on my team was amazing. But I had my own appointment tracking, and that meant I knew everyone who came from my efforts. And I remember I got the closing report from our operations director every month. Here's a system for you. Let me take this down real quick. Let me give you a system. Every month, our operations director would print out the name, address, everything, closing price, everything about anyone that had closed. So we're in early June right now, right? So about this time, I would be getting the closing report from May. Everyone who closed, buyers, sellers, everyone. And what I would do is and it was a little tedious, but I would cross-reference it, and I would take a look at it, and I would search my spreadsheet. Okay, I see Brenda Finley. Did I set her? You think you won't forget, but when you do this long enough, you will start to forget who you set appointments with. How many of you have experienced that? You're like, woohoo, I just got a check from someone. I don't even remember who they are. Amazing. And so that's why you want to have this appointment tracker. So I remember one time on my team, I did not get paid for one that I set. It was the easiest thing ever. Michael, part of this is the relationship you have. But I went to one of our agents and I was like, hey, did you get paid for setting, whoever, Tyra Parker? And he did. And I simply just pulled up my tracker. I was like, oh, I actually set her back in July. And he was real quick. Oh, okay, let's fix it. And we went to our operations director to work that out. Okay. So, but if I hadn't tracked it, one, I wouldn't have even noticed it, let alone had documented evidence. So that's part of it. It's the documentation that can just show this isn't me thinking I said it. I actually did. Like, here's my report right here. And so that will definitely help you out. Okay. So why else are we tracking? So number one, it helps make sure you get paid correctly. Number two, and I mentioned this earlier, it is your hot list for appointments. So I never thought of it that way, but I had a manager once who really challenged my thinking. And I was at the end of the month and I was a little shy on my goal. And he was like, well, have you called your no-shows? And I'm thinking, no, I'm not calling my no-shows. Rude. They didn't show up. And he had a really good point and totally changed my mindset. He was like, Anna, they gave you a yes. Like, they're so much hotter than someone you've never talked to. They were, you pre-qualified them, you picked a time. Yes, they no-showed you, but don't judge that. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe they got overwhelmed. Maybe they forgot to put it on their calendar. So I was like, all right, fine. And I called the list of people on my tracker who were no-shows. And I set about 2 to 3 appointments. I can't remember exactly, but it was more than one at the end of the month. And I ended up doing great with my goal. And that was just a huge aha for me because I think I was judging the no-shows. Have you ever done that? Like you're like, oh, these people, they're not that serious, No, several of them, in fact, a lot of them are good people. Just something happened that day. How many of you have ever not showed up for an appointment? And it was like a miscommunication or you had an off day, who knows? Things happen. Okay, the next thing, and I'll make this more clear when I show you an example, but it will also help you with lead rotation. And what I mean by that is this won't apply if you are an individual agent, but if you are on a team setting appointments for other people, it will just help you know who gets the next one. So in my screen right now, I see Elena, Jay, and Dan. So if I'm the ISA, it would just be, if I'm doing round robin, that first point there, it would be Elena, Jay, Dan. Elena, sorry, I said your name wrong. Elena, Jay, Dan. Elena, Jay, Dan, just over and over and over. That's round robin. And I'll know who's next because I would be tracking it. So then I know who to give the next appointment to. The other way you could rotate leads could be performance-based. So we did have an agent once on our team who was not converting the leads. And I had to do a quick minute because I was the one setting them. And I had to ask myself, am I giving him the bad leads? Like, am I setting leads for him that are bad? Like the ones that I'm like, oh, I don't know if they'll show up. And I looked at my tracker and thought, no, I mean, I'm giving him a variety of lead sources. Everything's fair. He's getting the same kind of leads everyone else is. Really hear me when I say this. Everything was equal across the board. And that particular agent had an incredibly low conversion when they came in. So everyone else is converting close to that 90 to 95%, which was what our team was pretty normal for. And he was down, I don't remember, but it was closer to 50 in that range somewhere. So what we concluded was it's not who he's getting. It's not like he's getting all the expireds and everyone else is getting all the referrals. So we were able to conclude it's his skill. His skill is not where it needs to be. And I want you to know, we pulled him off ISA leads. We no longer teed up leads for him, and it was painful. I hated doing it. He hated it happening. And we just had that conversation of these people need to be taken care of. And based off conversion rates, your skill is not where it needs to be. And we're going to give them to other agents for now. Do you know that was so painful for him? He got really serious about practicing his presentation. And the next year, he won top buyer agent for our entire team. So the pain point of pulling that away, and those of you that are either individual or on a team, think through, what's your pain point right now? Where do you feel like, oh, I'm just not converting? What if you got hyper focused on that and thought, I'm going to become the best on the team at this? What would I need to do? How much do I need to practice? And that guy went from being the lowest converter to the top on the team. That was an amazing story. But the point I'm making is that came from the appointment tracker. And we pulled him off leads for a while, and we told him how to get back on. Like, here's what you need to do to get back onto rotation. But for now, you are off the list. You can set your own appointments, but we are not setting them for you until you get this up. And again, it didn't take long because he got real serious and he fixed it. The other thing is it'll help you keep track for best fit. So what I mean is, earlier I was saying Elena, Jay, Dan, Elena, Jay, Dan. But let's say I just set an appointment for Jay and I get a call and this person is an investor. And maybe Jay is great with investors. So I'm thinking to myself, I just set one for Jay, but he would be the best person to work with this guy because it's kind of his specialty. I might go Elena, Jay, 2 in a row, Dan. And because of the tracker, I would know, all right, now Elena needs 2 and Dan needs 2 before Dan gets another. It just helped me even it out. Does that make sense the way I'm explaining it? Basically, just made sure we were fair. So however you want to do lead rotation, but those are 3 ways that you can do it. Again, just round robin. That is the most common. That is what most teams do. I am a fan of performance-based. And part of why I'm a fan is because I saw how much that worked. People want leads from other people. So it drives performance when you have a performance-based situation. Okay, next, it reveals your top 5 sources. What I mean by that, there was a time on our team that they were talking about pulling a lead source. And I thought to myself, gosh, I feel like that's where most, a lot of my appointments come from there. And I was able to go into my team leader and show him the appointment tracker and just say, I don't know if you realize that, but look, that is about 20 appointments a month for me. And you're talking about cutting it. He did not realize. And that was a big factor in our conversation. But I remember thinking, thank goodness I'm tracking this. Because if I weren't tracking it, I could have just lost one of my best lead sources. The other thing is, when you are choosing who to call, a lot of people think they need a lot of lead sources. And what Gary Keller talks about is each person should really have their top 5 that's like their specialty, and make sure you're working those top 5. I had an agent once who started calling expireds, but they'd been in the business about 15 years or so, and they had a lot of other lead sources that were top, and their business started to really struggle. And I was like, hey, let's try to figure this out. And what we realized, she was spending 100% of her time calling expireds. She went all in and was totally neglecting the top 5 sources from her business. And we kind of laughed about it. We caught it quick on a coaching call, and we agreed, still call expireds because you want to, like you're wanting to develop that skill, but make it an hour a day, not 3 hours a day. Make sure you're still calling the 5 that have worked for you in the past, and then add in expireds in addition, but don't replace. So that'll help you. The other thing is it'll help you see your trends. So it'll help you know, am I hitting my metrics? So some teams have expectations around how many people have you set each month, how many people hired the team, how many people showed up. This will make it really easy for you to track that. And then also it will help you discover why people don't sign. And I will show you the tracker in just a minute and you'll see what I mean. But there's a spot where if people don't show up or they don't hire you, that you can put down why. That, let me tell you, that was not the intended golden nugget of the tracker. To be totally honest with you, the tracker I'm about to show you, I created because I was super frustrated. And I was super frustrated that I couldn't keep up with my appointments. I was complaining to my leader that I don't know what happens. I set an appointment and they just disappear. And I had this moment of, all right, Anna, you can either keep complaining about this or you can be proactive and do something about it. And that's where this tracker came from. But I never expected that tracking why people did not sign, that became one of the most important pieces of information for our team. We could then go into scripting sessions where we would practice and know exactly what we needed to practice versus just picking something somewhat random. And so we looked at the tracker on a regular basis to see where are our pain points. What are we not converting? What are the reasons people are not signing? This will all make more sense when I show it to you again in just a second. So let me show you real quick what to be tracking. This is in your notes. You have a couple blanks to fill in. And then we're going to spend the rest of our time, I just bit my tongue. We're going to spend the rest of our time actually looking at the tracker, and then we'll do Q&A. So I see some questions coming in. Just hang tight. We'll get to those in a minute. The reason I'm showing this to you is if you want to use a different tracker, or if you have a system that does this for you, that's fine. I mean, you do not have to use the tracker that I personally am providing for you, but you do want to make sure this is tracked. Okay. One reason address is important, especially if they're a seller. I did have times that people would buy, for example, I have a relative that goes by Bud. His actual name is Richard. So when I pulled the closing report, if I looked for Bud, I would miss it. But if I had the address, so I always cross-checked everything. I looked up everyone that closed. I looked up their name. I looked up their address against this sheet just to make sure I was not missing anybody. Okay, next screen. Tell me if you need a little more time here. The reason you're tracking anticipated price versus actual final price. Do you remember when we did the economic model? Actually, that's coming up. Erase what I just said. I'm really excited. We're going to do this soon. You'll see why. We're going to go over the economic model, which will help you cast your business or forecast your business. Part of that is knowing your average price point. So for example, if I thought my average price point was going to be 400,000 and it's actually 500,000, that tells me, great, I can either just make a whole lot more money this year, which is what I would choose, or maybe I don't need as many closings as I thought because my price point is 100,000 more than I expected. So that's why you track your price point, because it will help you just know, am I on track to hit my goal? So while I pull up an example tracker for you, you can find an Excel document of this tracker. in the client portal under session 12. So it is there for you. You are welcome to use it. You don't have to use it if you have something else. The main thing is that it's tracking all of these things. I will have people say, well, I have an appointment tracker, but it doesn't track all this stuff. And what I would say is, from one sales agent to another, add in a tracker. If you have something that's only tracking half of this data, I would recommend using this one, in addition to the other one if needed. Sometimes our team requires a certain tracker of us because it's what they use team-wide. And you will say, for me, for my business within this business, I'll still use what they have me doing, and I'm going to add in my own, because you got to make sure you have all the data. So just know everything on this sheet was created from a pain point that I experienced. And I wish I had known to track all this stuff when I started. So let me just show you real quick, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Basically what you do is you put down the day you set the appointment. Notice over here, it says appointment date. That is part of how we figured out if they were more than 48 hours away, they didn't show up. That's part of how we figured that out. So appointment date, date set, date they're supposed to show up. The other thing is the date that it's supposed to show up. This helped me know, oh, okay, it's January 2nd. Let me go ask so-and-so how that appointment went, because they were supposed to show up today. So this column kind of let me know when to ask the agents, hey, did they show up? Did they sign? You know, what happened? Okay, who said it? Now, if you are the only person on a team, then you probably don't need this column because it's going to be you, right? But if you are running a department, you might have it where you just put down, you know, each name. Buyer or seller. This will matter again when I teach you the economic model in a couple of sessions. But you do want to consider, am I mostly working with buyers? Am I mostly working with sellers? And then what was your goal? If you said, you know, in 2023, I want to be a seller-focused agent, and you realize, oh gosh, 80% of my people are buyers, this will help you catch that, okay? The other thing here, again, this won't matter if you are a single agent. This, though, was who am I setting appointments for? So this would have been Annalisa, Nate, Haro, Annalisa, Haro, Nate. You know, just shows who am I setting appointments for. Source, people always ask, what do all those letters mean? I'll tell you, but don't really worry about it. But basically, BT meant it was a Boomtown lead. No, AREF was agent referral. It was just our way to keep track. We came up with all these little acronyms. Obviously, FSBO is for sale by owner. PCR was past client referral. This doesn't really matter for you, okay? You don't need to implement that, but just make sure you are tracking the source somehow. So if you want to put down Google, write out the whole word, this is kind of like an internal thing for us. Then you have the client name, which I just made easy. I put the Smiths. This actually was a copy of a real tracker, and I just made everything general to protect client information. Then we have appointment date. Then we have, did they show? Yes or no? And if they signed, great. Let's put down the date they signed. What I like about this, guys, and by the way, I'm not very Excel oriented. Data is like, I love looking at data, but organizing it is not necessarily my specialty. What I like about having this in here is Haro, my leader, used to walk by and say, hey, how many appointments did you set that hired us this month? How many signatures did you ultimately bring to the team as an inside sales agent? And what I could do is come in here and I could sort, in fact, it's already sorted, so I won't do it, but I could sort by column K and real quick see who were all the January people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 people that I set appointments for hired us this month. So it's just made it easy to know how many appointments have I set, how many signed, and I could at any time give an accounting for what I've contributed to the team. Now, people who did not sign, notice that we put the reason in there. Notice how many say found another agent. By the way, this was our real tracker. So I just, again, took out all the names, but this is all true data. Found another agent, interviewing another agent. This for real, this data made us realize, shoot, we've got to get better at asking them, are they interviewing another agent? And then also, what are they looking for in an agent? And so this became a huge thing for us to figure out what we needed to practice. And I'm really proud to say we did tweak what we were asking. You'll notice it reflected on the pre-qualifying sheet. There's questions. Are you interviewing another agent? What are you looking for in an agent? And that came from this pain point right here. And that actually fixed it. So, but I don't know that we would have ever caught that that was a common objection for us if we weren't tracking it. Make sense? Cool. Then we would put down anticipated price point. So as the ISA, I would say, what do you think your house is probably worth? And they would tell me, and I would put it down here in the column. When are we expecting that they will close? What was the actual close date? And then what was the final price? Okay. These are things that I did not know to track from L on over. I did not know to track that when I first got into my, position, and I wish I had known sooner. So just know every column has a purpose, every single one. It was created from oh shoot, I should have been tracking that. So just track it and know that even if you're not totally sure why you are tracking it today, you will know as time goes on, you'll realize like, oh, that's why I'm tracking that. I see now. Okay. So just make sure you're tracking all of those things. Again, if you have another system that does all that, perfect. If you are missing any of these data points, make sure you are tracking them in addition to what you've already got. So for action, and then I will open it up for Q&A. For action, number one, if you are on a team, discuss with your leader the best way to assign leads, unless you already know. So just know, do we want to do round robin? Do we want to do performance-based? Like what do you want? What do you want us to do? Number two, solidify what tracking system you will use. So whether that's the appointment tracker that I provided today, something else within the team, just find out what you guys want to be using. And then really the last thing, just make sure you're tracking. So start today. If you're feeling like, oh shoot, I should have been doing this, don't worry about that. Just start today. Just start today and start tracking. Okay. So what questions do we have? Or if you have a takeaway, happy to hear those too. Let me take a look at the chat box real quick and hit those first. Yeah, Janet, to your point, a lot of this is in command. And the thing I always like to ask is if I have a system that's already doing it perfect, do I look at it? Is it easy for me to interpret? And if so, then great, track it in that system. And if you know yourself enough to know, yeah, I'm not really looking at that too close, then add in a tracker. It really is not, it's not a lot of extra work. Okay. Yeah, Dan, I'm setting for Dan, and Dan, because you're a single agent. Yeah. Also, I have a lot of clients who use CTE. If you're not familiar with CTE, don't worry about it. I don't even know what it stands for. If someone knows, let me know. It's a tracker that a lot of people subscribe to. And this will give some of you an aha moment. I'll ask people, are you tracking these things? Yes, I'm tracking these things. Great. What's your conversion from contact to set? I don't know. I get it. I'm no judgment from me. Trust me. I used to not be very good at tracking. So you just have to ask yourself, am I tracking it? Yes. Could I tell someone what my conversions are? Or could I easily find who the appointments are that I've set? And if the answer is no, either study the tracking system you already have and start using it, or just add in these trackers I've given you. And I have a lot of agents who say, okay, my team wants me to use CTE, so I will keep doing that. And I'm going to add in some other tracker that I've provided here. What matters is that you know the data. That is what matters, is that you know the data. Okay. Okay, what else are we saying in here? Barb, I'll answer your question if we get all the other tracking questions answered. She's asking about appointments in the office. Dan, a whiteboard. So you could put that on a whiteboard, but I would still put it in the spreadsheet, and I'll tell you why. That goes back to I can sort by columns. So I just know, and it is a little different for you as a single agent, but as someone on a team, I could have a closing a year from now that I set today. And maybe they canceled, or maybe they signed and then they had a family emergency and put it on hold for a year. So I do think you can do stuff on a whiteboard. It can be energizing in the office to see it visually like that, but I wouldn't not also put it into the spreadsheet.
So
'Cause you
maybe a
go
Google
out-
Docs.
Yeah, Google
kind of thing
Docs.
that everybody on the team can get to.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Gotcha.
Because then, 2 years from now, you can see. Because a lot of times you will have people, whether you're a single agent or you're setting for a team, you'll set it today. We've all had this. If you've been in the business any length of time, you set something today and they don't close for a year and you can forget about them, right? So that's why I think that matters. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll answer Barb's question about the appointment in the office. People are always curious. What do you mean you set up appointments to come to your office? Do you want to know why we did that? But here's a big part of why. If we are driving to their house, at least where we live, because we are actually in the biggest city of South Carolina, but I'm from Washington, D.C., and trust me, the biggest city in South Carolina is still very small. So a lot of our people we have to drive to. And if we are driving to all of these houses, we can't meet as many people. So for example, our listing agent, she would lead generate every morning until 12. And by the way, this person sold 99 homes her first year in real estate. So listen to what success looks like. She would lead generate every morning from 9 to 12 without fail. She also would not drive to their house. And what that meant was she could meet at least 3 people every afternoon. Now, if she was driving to their houses, one, there's a safety issue. That's a safety issue. Number 2, she wouldn't have had the time in her calendar to meet 3 people every afternoon and still get off work to go home to her kids and her husband, right? She usually left the office 6 o'clock or so. And she sold 99 homes her first year. So that's part of why we would do them in office, is it was really good to manage our time because we weren't driving everywhere and it was safety. And then Barb, we would not do we didn't need to do more than one appointment. I know this is a little mind blowing because when I heard it, I was like, what? We don't meet with them to set the price. We don't need to see their house to set the price. And I'm not gonna in 2 minutes be able to explain what a listing presentation sounds like for that, but here's the short answer. Barbara, say you come to my office and we're looking up your house and I'm going to pull up comps and I'll say, hey, Barbara, is your house about the same, better or lesser? And you would say better. Okay, what about this house? Here's another comp. Better or lesser or the same? Better, okay? And basically you will, I don't need to see your house. You know what your house looks like. And you can tell me, yes, my house is the same, better or lesser than that one. And what was beautiful is they wouldn't argue with the price when we finally concluded. If we're showing them comps and they're like, yeah, my house is lesser than that one. Oh, yeah, that one's in better condition than mine. Oh, yep, better condition than that one. We're showing them the houses that they're competing against. They can see the price per square foot. So then when we say, okay, based off of today's conversation, we believe your home should be priced right here. They didn't often argue because they saw it. They could see it, right? And then what our process was, Barb, is we would then send a stager to the house. And I asked our listing agent once, of those 99, how many times did we get the price right in the office? And she said there was only one time that after the stager went to the house, we had to adjust the price because the stager would take pictures for us, not listing pictures, just pictures. Like, here's what it looks like. And there was one house that smelled like smoke that we couldn't have known. And we changed the price. One time out of the 99. That I asked about. So it works. That is the short answer of what that sounds like. And the easiest way to get them into our office was to confidently say, hey, Barb, the next step is to meet in our office and do 3 things. We way overcomplicate it. This is the next step. We meet in our office and do 3 things. And if you talk about it like this, like it's normal, the sky is blue, my eyes are blue, my name is Anna, your name is Barb, we work in real estate, you have a house to sell. We meet in our office. It's just, yeah, normal. That worked beautifully. Our Alyssa has a bunch of dots. So I don't know if you're thinking or if you accidentally hit the dots. Can I tell you what that taught me? And then I'll let you go because we're a bit over time. I really hope that you really, really process what I'm about to say. I'm trying to think of how to say it well. When I got into real estate, I didn't know that agents were going to houses because my leader taught me to set appointments in the office. So when I set appointments, it was, yeah, the next step is to meet in our office and do 3 things. We're going to go back over motivation and price. Because I didn't know that that wasn't normal, I just talked about it like it was normal. And 70 to 80% of my appointments showed up and 90 to 95% of them signed. And I hear agents that have never done that say, oh, that just can't work. Oh, they're just not going to do that. And I'm thinking, yeah, because that's what you think. If you think that, that's going to be true. If you think they're not going to show up, and that's so going to come across when you set that appointment. But if you just, the next step's to meet in our office, do 3 things. And sometimes people would say, well, other people are willing to come to my house. And I would say, yeah, a lot of them are, but we get different results. And part of that is because we do things differently. Would you like 3 o'clock today or 4 o'clock tomorrow? And it worked. I'm telling you, it worked. So that's a whole different conversation. But that hopefully gave you some inspiration. But what you think is going to happen has a significant impact on what will happen. I hope that's, out of all that, I hope that's your takeaway. Yeah, cool. I really appreciate you guys. Please hear me. I am if you got to go, you can go. If you want to stay and have a Hallmark moment, stay on for just a second. Crystal, that's fine. We're done. Jay's giving me a virtual hug. But can I just tell y'all, I'm at I'm at a conference for Clifton Strengths, and there's a lot of coaches here. And interacting with them has made me realize how incredibly blessed I am. I might get a little emotional that I get to do what I do. So many of them, like, they've never heard of teaching a webinar. They're struggling to find business. And when I tell them that I work mostly 1 day a week because of webinars, I haven't met one other person here who's in that situation. And do you know, I could not do that if you were not in this class. Like, you guys being here is what makes that possible. And I already knew that I was really blessed and thankful, but I think interacting with other coaches that have great businesses and just realizing, and I haven't really said it to them, but in my head, I think I'm one of the most, I just feel like I have the best clients on the planet, and I love this business model, and that you guys are here. I'm leaving this conference so thankful that I get to partner with Keller Williams and I get to teach you guys. So just know I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in me and this product we've created, and for still being here 12 sessions in. I just really am very aware today of how blessed I am to be able to do what I do. And that is really, I can't teach if there's no students. So thank you for being here. Can I just give you a hug virtually? Hug. Okay, cool. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your day. I will see you next week back in my normal spot. And I hope you have a great and safe rest of the day. See you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.